way too much for people to handle or ever want to think about. So, I imagine that, people rationalize that by saying, like, well, weird stuff happens. The human body is amazing. It's capable of all kinds of marvelous feats and such. And that's all well and good, but I I don't believe it. It sounds like what it is. It sounds like a rationalization. Because I mean, Gary, you're absolutely right. There is no good explanation for that. It just doesn't exist. There's no way a kid that age should be able to travel to disappear so suddenly and so thoroughly that he just couldn't be found. I mean, it's one thing, if you're out swimming or something and kids in the water, you turn around and they're gone. Well, you have a pretty good idea where they went, even if you can't see them. And of course that's very dangerous. But if you're camping, there's no way in that brief amount of time that a kid could get far enough away where you wouldn't be able to find them until you suddenly do, this obscene distance away. So, yeah, I mean, portals, maybe. I guess it's as good of an explanation as any right now.
Well, some people said, oh, maybe a Bigfoot grabbed the child and drug it 15 miles and decided to eat it up on the side of a mountain. I guess maybe that is a possibility, or a mountain man or somebody crazy. But then was a case of a woman, too, with her friends. This one path they used all the time to go jogging. And she decided to run ahead of them because they were really familiar with the path. And she ran ahead of them, and then, they get up to the top where they, stop. She's nowhere to be found. So they look around, they go back and get the Rangers. The Rangers come, they all of a sudden now bring out a whole bunch of people looking for her. And they search this area where up towards the top where there's a clump of like brush, and they checked it over real well. Well, I guess the thing is, like, the next day, her body is there. Like, it wasn't there when they searched. Then somehow overnight it appeared right there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. It's just hard to know what to make of that. Again, as somebody who goes hiking pretty frequently, I understand all of the normal explanations. I understand all of the sort of rationalizations. Depending on where you are, if somebody falls off a trail or something, like, they can disappear pretty quickly. If it's, middle of the summer, everything's real lush. Like, you get too far off the trail, and say you're unconscious, like a still body, it's real hard to find them, even just a few feet off the trail, depending on how much you have to search, or how much area rather you have to search. But yeah, I mean, that's what I can't understand is how this body shows up in an area they've already searched. It only makes sense to me if they find it someplace where they find her body someplace they had already looked, because otherwise, how the heck did it get there? I guess, you'd have to look at things like time of death. You'd have to have the coroner make some kind of determination as to what the cause of death was, which in a lot of these cases, it isn't real clear. If somebody died, if they may just say that they died of exposure or something, and what does that mean? What actually killed them? But the only way, and this is a long shot, that I could see it making sense is if somehow she managed to hurt herself. Say she knocks herself out, and she's like 10 feet off the trail in heavy underbrush, and nobody just happened to search like that particular area because it's a huge trail or something. And then later she wakes up and tries to crawl or something to, to go get help for herself after everybody's left. And then goes to this spot they already searched and then maybe passes away, I guess. But, without knowing the details that, I'd said before, like time of death and cause of death and stuff, like, there's no way to know for sure. And that seems like a really oddly specific and coincidental set of circumstances anyway. So it's just weird no matter what. I don't know that I buy things like, people getting attacked by Bigfoot and stuff. I haven't really seen any evidence of like animal attacks. Have any of the bodies been partially eaten or show other signs of some sort of savage animal attack? I don't really recall a whole lot of that.
Well, one thing too, I had my Bigfoot encounter in 2002. I grew up going camping and going in the woods all my life. After that experience, I've not gone back in the woods, period. We got almost 2 acres of cedar trees on my property, and I very seldom even venture in there. It just was such a bad experience in my life. But what gets me is that, it could have been even an alien abduction that has gone wrong. Simple, they abducted her, they returned her, and she died. Or maybe she died and they returned her remains back, in the same area. It's so many things you really don't know. Or is there somebody left over from the Vietnam War living out in the forests? And it's crazy. That's another possibility too. But not 14,000 people worth.
Well, yeah. The sheer numbers involved are staggering. To where it would be difficult to, I think, even imagine a single cause being responsible for them. Any one single thing happening sort of on that scope would be, it would be beyond imagining. So if there is something like that, that's affecting people in that way, out in sort of the hidden parts of our country, then, I'd say we have something to be pretty concerned about. And, as for what it is, well, we need to really get on top of finding out, I think.
Well, or maybe they're kind of like not telling us what's going on, because, one thing when the gentleman who wrote the book on it and has been giving seminars everywhere about it, is one thing he said, that the park ranger, the police for the park Forest Service, don't and will not give out any information. And they don't even have good records for some reason. And that I find really strange. And also they spend only a day or two and then they kind of call off the search and rescues. But again, it just makes me wonder, like these people, it's all different. Some of them are hunters, some of them aren't hunters. Just people going out for a walk in the woods, a group of them. The last person who's in the line of the group of 5 or 6, people, just going, in the woods, all of a sudden, hey, they turn around and, hey, the guy's gone or she's gone. And they look and they can't find anything ever. And that's what the part it kind of amazes me. Even if somebody walked off and, you can still scream and yell. And, if you're within distance of hearing, you're going to hear that person.
Yeah, you absolutely would. So much of these don't make sense, really. Unless you're walking on like a sheer cliff face or something where somebody could, realistically fall a vast distance, by just stepping off the trail or something, then yeah, I have no idea how somebody could just get off the trail and be gone like that. It just doesn't make sense. And what's interesting also about so many of these is the existence of these stories in folklore going back, well, basically forever. You know, well, one of my friends and colleagues, Joshua Kutchin, actually just published a book relatively recently called Thieves of the Night, and it's about like childhood, like paranormal childhood abduction, and it sort of ties together like fairy lore with UFO abduction experiences and stuff. And you know, he did a fantastic job researching this book, and it's a subject that I've been interested in for years and years, because the correlations between these stories, I don't think it's something that we can or should disregard. You know, for instance, there are so many like stories in folklore of people, you know, out in sort of the wild areas of, you know, Great Britain, say, and they'll stumble upon a specific area. You know, maybe it's a hill, maybe it's a stretch of woods or something, and they will disappear. And sometimes they'll come back, and sometimes they won't. But these areas began to get these reputations, you know, for being fairy haunted, and people would encounter strange beings there, and people would see weird lights. But you know, it's pretty analogous with modern UFO contactee and abduction and all of these missing people reports and experiences. You know, these things have a lot in common. So I think regardless of what you think the cause is, you know, we have to admit that these events have been happening since, you know, recorded history, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing new. Which, you know, honestly makes me wonder, you know, like, is it, you know, have we been in contact with a technologically superior race for, you know, since the advent of human civilization, or is it something weirder? You know, is science just now sort of catching up to where we'll be able to recognize that, you know, there are layers of reality surrounding us that we have caught glimpses of and have built entire, you know, modalities of belief and religion and stuff around, but have never really perceived meaningfully, you know, in a way that we could ever really understand them. Yeah, I mean, I could see things ending up closer to that at this point, I think, because so much of this is so weird that I can't explain it with just technology. You know, mechanical spaceships and stuff coming down and taking people, that alone, it doesn't make sense to me anymore as an explanation for people disappearing right behind a group of friends. You know, from somebody wandering a few feet off a trail and disappearing forever. You know, like it just doesn't add up. It just, I have the feeling it's something much weirder than we can even imagine.
Well, like a portal opens up and they happen to walk through it, you know, it opens and closes.
Sure.
Maybe we have those going on all the time on this earth and we don't realize it. And maybe that's why a lot of these people go missing. But, you know, back about 3 weeks ago, I had an author on. He wrote a book about the, you know, Roswell. And then he also wrote a book about UFO triangles and all this stuff. and his triangle that he developed